I'm Jeremy Greer.
And I'm Gary Butterfield.
And this is Days of Future Cast, Avengers versus X-Men, Gary versus Jeremy edition. We are finally kind of kicking off the real Avengers versus X-Men with this set of episodes. And then going to kind of go on a tour of the X-Men universe, X-Men Avengers universe, and just kind of find out what's like the last issue of basically 3 different arcs that we know nothing about. So this is going to be really weird. Yeah. How you doing, Gary?
I'm doing all right. I was thinking about Gary versus Jeremy, and for a second I was thinking, like, what are the things that, like, I could beat you at, what are the things you could beat me at?
Okay.
You know? My instinct is just to be like, oh yeah, like, Jeremy could beat me at anything, because I tend to just project that onto people. You know, they're like younger and more fit and like stronger than I am.
We need to take a sidebar to the therapy room, Gary. Are you okay? Everything good?
No. Well, I mean, my life is a sidebar to the therapy room, but the black bug room of therapy, the black therapist room. But I was thinking, like, oh no, like Jeremy's actually, you know, when I'm talking to Cool or whatever, I'm like, oh, this guy's young. You know, he's you know, not necessarily with it, but slightly more with it than I am in terms of being youth. And then I'm talking to you. It's like, oh yeah, you're my peer. We're both old men with crumbling bodies.
It's true. Mm-hmm.
You know, it'd be a good matchup.
I think, like, on pure skills, I feel like we'd be pretty evenly matched in like a foot race or a jumping competition, like anything like physical. Ooh. I feel like we would be pretty close, just for the fact that we're both 40 and neither of us want to like hurt ourselves.
You would win on those by at least a little bit, I think.
Okay.
But if I like, because I'm not at my best shape, pandemic wise, like I've lost some weight, but it's all muscle mass. Gotcha. You know, like I'm just like not in good shape. So I think you'd take those.
I think you could. I know for a fact you can absolutely outsing me at a karaoke bar. Like I've never heard you sing at a karaoke bar, but I know for a fact that that's the truth, because anybody who's ever heard me
karaoke
try to sing,
I could do Isaac. You know,
okay.
Okay. We go down to individual video games, you know, but it made me think about, just you saying that made me think about versus, and I'm glad I'm glad we're allies.
Yeah.
It's like we're like, I'm the Beast and you're the Avengers. You know,
I am a multitude of characters and you're one furry guy.
Yeah. Inside you.
This is like this is exactly like a Pixar movie. I'm ready. Let's go.
Yes. You were talking about the end of a bunch of storylines. This is the first time we've covered like one of these, you know, a big cross, you know, line wide storyline on the show, and people hate these. And this was a good reminder of why people complain about these and don't like them. Like, this is why Ultimate X-Men, the Ultimate Universe, got born and stuff. Is that like 2 or 3 times a year there's a big event where, if you know, they do all these tie-in issues. So if you're just reading the comic, it gets derailed into this storyline. If you're just trying to read the storyline, you have to read all these little side things where, like, there are subplots you don't know, and there are, you know, plots you don't know, and it's weird. Like, it's interesting reading this, because we're talking about this week, we're going to talk about Wolverine and the X-Men, which is a comic I started reading and fell off when it got into this crossover. Yeah. I was like, I don't know what the hell's going on. And now it's the opposite. I'm reading this crossover and I'm like, oh, what the fuck was going on with Wolverine and the X-Men? Like, you know, we're going to spend some time there for a little bit.
I would get real frustrated too if I was like going to the comic book shop and buying these every month. Like, this is one thing for us to deal with on like a Marvel Unlimited kind of subscription, where like I'm paying for them, like I'm paying my monthly fee or whatever, but it's a la carte. I can just read whatever I want to. But if I'd plop down like $4 for, you know, Wolverine and the X-Men number 10, and then just got completely sidetracked by this event that I may not even care about, like I may be way more interested in what's happening in these individual stories, I'd be kind of ticked. Like, I would definitely get annoyed with some of this stuff. And then on the flip side of that, like, as the person who is trying to organize like our reading list so that it makes just a goddamn lick of sense, like, we're covering, like, on this episode we're going to do AvX number 1, which is like a mainline separate from everything Avengers versus X-Men, and then the other 3 things that we're going to cover barely even tie into it. Like, I'm pretty sure in the Avengers number 25, the only thing that relates is a brief flashback in the very first page from Captain America.
At the very end. It's the very end. It's they show up and they're like, Phoenix. Like, that's going to be like, this has always been the way with comic books too. I remember in the 90s, this shit would happen where I would read like the tie-ins to like Operation Zero Tolerance, and somebody, you know, there'd be like an ordinary Avengers story, and then someone would walk in and be like, "Hey guys, Operation Zero Tolerance is still going on," and then they would just go on with their lives.
That was it. That was the story.
like the crossover is like an iPhone news alert, you know, like that's it. Like,
Captain America just looks out.
Something.
I just got a push notification from the Guardian saying the X-Men is attacking us. Does anybody else know about this? Why is the Guardian up on this and we're not? Hank Pym.
Yeah, what's it? Yeah. Well, there are Ultrons about. Let's get back to it. You know, it's just it is pretty bad. And part of, you know, we're hoisting upon our own petard a little bit, because part of the idea of doing this crossover was to read a bunch of different comics by a bunch of different creators. And this problem will get a little bit better when it's not just the intro. We're in that phase where like the inciting incident has to be seen from many angles.
And I will say, like, I am because we'd made that decision, like, as much as these other issues aren't going to directly relate, I'm still kind of into it. Like, I was still having fun reading these random characters and being like, who the fuck is this? Why is Spider-Woman making out with Clint Barton constantly?
Well, it's that scene is very funny. We'll get to that. And it helps too that like all 4 issues we're talking about today are creators I at least like.
Yes.
You know, if not love, like, you know, the main crossover in Avengers, we're talking about Bendis, you know, and John Romita Jr., who is sometimes not to my taste, but sometimes is fine. And then Uncanny X-Men, this is the Kieran Gillen run. We're talking about next time, which I'd never read any of that, but Kieran Gillen is good. And Carlos Pacheco. And then Wolverine and the X-Men, which I have read before, which is Chris Bacallo, late day Chris Bacallo, so it's hard to read, but Jason Aaron, who I like quite a bit. So it's good folk at the very least.
Also, I want to mention before we get into the main part of this, if you're at home trying to keep track of what we're covering, I totally redid our episode guide page. So if you go to daysoffuturecast.com, I think you just click on the episode guide link. I've got it divided up into comics, movies, and TV shows. You click on that and you can go to the individual episodes. All of the comics coverage are broken out. They have individual episode links. So if you want to specifically listen to us cover like Uncanny X-Men #1, you can get exactly to that episode. All of those exist on the feed and everything, but like that's a real easy way to go through and like find individual episodes that you may be looking for. All the comics are organized by arcs as well, so like everything kind of makes a sense on there. If you find any weird stuff out there, like if you click on something that doesn't work, like just let me know. I had to edit it all in a tiny window in Markdown, which is frustrating, but I think it's fine. Like I tested a bunch of stuff and it seemed good, but definitely go check that out if you're trying to keep up with random stuff that we have covered over the years. You want to get into it, Gary?
Let's get into it with AvX X Round 1. Bendis and Romita, as we mentioned. We got a cover with just all the X-Men they can think of versus all the Avengers they could think of, with the notable Beast and Wolverine on the Avengers side. At this point, also Storm's in the Avengers at this point, but I think she might cross sides at some point during the crossover.
Yes.
But yeah, let's get into it right away. We get our little splash thing, and we're set up. And what they're trying to show, like with
I just want to say I hate the round 1. Like every time I read round 1, I'm like, are we in a fucking Mortal Kombat game? Like I know that's the goal. Like I know we are fighting, right?
Ding,
I know
ding.
this is a versus thing, but like every time I see it, I'm like, I just hear it in the round 1 fight kind of voice, and it just irks me.
Yeah, it does. And this is the crossover where Delsum joins the X-Men, so it ends up making a kind of sense, but that's not true. I don't like that either. It underlines the schoolyard part of this, which is like, you know, superheroes fighting, whereas like in the actual story, it's supposed to be more about this like grand melodrama and threat, you know. I was gonna say they do the cast page, and they're really trying to show how there are way, way, way more Avengers than X-Men.
Yes,
which is true, but
especially
our boys look outnumbered. Especially
because we have just got off the decimation event, so there's only like 200 mutants left in the world anyway. So we not a whole lot of people versus a whole lot of people, and we're going to start out on what is very obviously an alien planet. We've got some like purple grass and green sky. We've got a weird alien boy speaking a weird alien language, asking about his father, and the sky lights up, and it's the Phoenix Force killing an entire planet.
Yeah, as it do. Phoenix Force do be killing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It kills it. We continue. It's flying through the universe, just destroying that planet, going off to the next planet.
Yep.
Going to do its thing. We cut over to our Avengers over at Stark Tower with a character named Protector, who they're calling No. So I think this is Novar. I think this is Marvel Boy.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever read that comic?
No, I have not.
The Grant Morrison Marvel Boy.
Mm-mm.
It's the introduction, the villain of the MODOK TV series, the Living Corporation.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That was introduced in a Grant Morrison comic with Marvel Boy. And I think that's who this character is now. I think this is who Marvel Boy is.
Gotcha. Okay.
Just based on the name. And that's all I can offer. They're hanging out just on the rooftop, standing around, arguing about technology.
The whole group is like Wolverine having just a squat.
Yeah. Look at the pose Hawkeye's in. He's like,
everybody's just straight chilling in this.
It's very funny.
When Captain Marvel shows up, and before she can really say anything, they notice that something is coming from the sky, and it hits a jetliner, causing the wing to break off, and it's time to assemble some goddamn Avengers. Because they have to save this plane, they have to prevent this wing from crashing into buildings, they have to do classic Avengers shit.
Yeah, even though it does also crash into a building itself, which gets smashed.
Yeah,
real good.
Look,
they're mostly thinking about the plane at this point. Spider-Man handles those. So everyone's kind of split up to take care of different parts of this disaster. I don't really know what Thor does. Like, he kind of spins his hammer and creates a tornado that he puts the plane into, and then he Captain Phillips it into the water or whatever.
That's it. He's just basically storms it up. Like, if Storm was here, she could do this. You don't need a big fancy hammer to do this at all.
Yeah, and Storm, cannot stress this enough, probably is here or should be here. Like, I don't really know what Storm's status is, but there's another comic we're reading later where she's in the Avengers.
Yeah.
Captain Marvel stops the top of the building from falling on people. I love that the building just like dropped a bunch of people, like it's a can full of beans or something.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's very funny. Like, they're all fine. Nobody got actually hit. It just emptied out the building as a container.
What are the little? For some reason, I picture this as Rabbids from like those Mario versus Rabbids games, which I fucking hate those guys. So like, I was happy to see them die at all. So
yeah, Spider-Man saves them. Unfortunately, Spider-Man saves the Rabbids, which makes me sad. But good on Spider-Man. Iron Man is helping with the wing, dissolving it, smashing it into pieces. Thor lands the plane, and they're all in disaster mode. They go to the point of impact where the thing that crashed in to see what it was, and the thing that crashed through the plane and stuff was Nova.
Yep.
Which is a big deal. Nova's been gone for a little while. If you don't know what the Nova Corps are, they're basically the Marvel Green Lanterns. They don't have the same powers, but it's like space police. And that's all you really need to know about Nova.
We mentioned the last time we recorded that there was like an Avengers 1.5 that wasn't listed anywhere. This is probably a good time to tell folks not to bother with that, because I think it was their first attempt at like a digital comic book. So when you're reading it in a digital format now, like I'm hitting the next page and Nova's moving like 2 frames to the right. Like
it's like a flip book.
It's a literal, it's a digital flip book is what it is. And it's really bizarre. God. It's really bizarre to read in 2021. And it's all about Nova trying to race from space to here so that he can warn people about the Phoenix. Like, it's just an extended monologue. It's like 60 fucking pages or something, because it has these tiny little like differences from page to page. So don't bother.
That sounds like hell.
It was I'm bad.
Glad I'm not reading that. Everyone thinks Nova's dead. It's a big deal that Nova's back. I cannot remember how Nova died. He warns them. He's like, it's coming. And Thor and Iron Man start kind of scanning to see what it could be. And Captain America's nervous. We cut over to Utopia.
Yep.
where the X-Men are hanging out, and Cyclops and Hope are training, and this is home of the thin Cyclops. If you want a real gawky thin Cyclops, John Romita Jr. is your man.
I like super like svelte Cyclops just in general, like that 1960s kind of styling. This is just great. Like he just looks tall and lanky, and also like he could kick some ass too at the same time. Like this is my Cyclops.
He's called Slim.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a good like nice weird little like bit in this group of comics is that Cyclops is drawn as tall and thin, and Wolverine is drawn as short and stout.
Yes,
and bad artists just kind of draw them with the same body.
Just the Wolverine the teapot, huh?
yeah. He's a Bub's little teapot. He's a little Tim Hortons pot. So Cyclops is being really tough on Hope.
Yes.
Training her is kind of the idea here. Like not letting her use her powers, just beating the crap out of her.
Yeah. And also saying like, cause she's like, let's use our powers this time. And he's like, no. And then he sneaks attacks her with his powers and says stuff like, well, I said you couldn't use yours. I didn't say I couldn't use mine. We know now that Hope kind of copies power, so she could just zap him back. But instead she, just starts beating the shit out of him. And they look like they're actually like fighting, like knocking each other in the jaw, like kneeing each other in the chest. Like this looks like it hurts. And every time she goes down, Scott is there just completely yelling at her again.
Yeah. We cut over to Magneto watching this. Emma Frost walks up and it's like, how's the show? And says, your boy's in a mood. Emma Frost, take your man home. And she's like, yeah, that you should take training seriously. And he's like, I do know that, but I also know this is compulsion. Magneto sees what's going on here. And that this is laying grounds, and this is Scott turning into a Magneto figure, like a zealot.
Yep.
As we go on, they're continuing to fight, and Hope gets really stressed out because Scott's beating the crap out of her, until eventually she freaks out, is saying like, "What do you think is going to happen? What are you preparing me for?" And blows up in a big Phoenix Raptor, and knocks Scott back.
Yes.
Big deal.
Not a good situation for anybody. And it's important to remember, and like, I don't think the comic does a very good job of this. She doesn't have any clue as to what the Phoenix Force is. Like, I think we found that out in maybe the Extinction stuff, or maybe
in Zero,
or maybe it was in Zero, where she has nobody has told her who Jean Grey is, the story. Like, she's never picked up any of the books. Like,
she knows hints.
Yeah.
She knows hints, but they won't tell her, because that's what the X-Men issue is going to be, her wanting to find that information that we're covering next time. From a gigantic floating dildo named Unit. So look forward to that.
Can't wait. I can't wait.
We've become totally unit pilled on this podcast. So yeah,
he said unit. Cyclops gets thrown across the way by this Phoenix Force blast, and Hope is just standing there, like with smoke coming off her, going like, "What the fuck is that? Like, what happened? Did you guys see that?" And we switch back over to the Avengers, where Captain America and Iron Man are given a presentation to the president and basically probably the joint chiefs of staff, generals, security guys, whatever. I don't know how our government works. I just know it's bad, Gary. Like that's all I need to know.
Just old white guys in suits mostly, and the Red Skull is there, is what it looks like on the right. I know. I think that's a coloring mistake, but it does look a little bit like. It's his craftiest plan yet. Become the Secretary of Agriculture.
But they're here to give a presentation because since the Skrull invasion, which was previous to this, they've kind of got a system set up where they're monitoring interstellar situations that could have impact on the United States. On Earth, which is a real like Avenger shit to do. Like this is good stuff. But they explain the situation with Nova, and as they're talking about this, they're having to explain the whole situation with Phoenix, which of course we all know about. And they're basically saying here like it's coming. We got to go find the X-Men. I kind of dig this. Like, I don't normally really like the Avengers working with the government like this, but as a way to explain what the fuck is happening, I think this is good.
Well, the status quo here is that they had just recently taken over from Norman Osborn.
Yeah.
Like after the Skrull invasion, Norman Osborn was in this position, and the government is overcorrected, to just be like, no, Avengers good. What the hell were you thinking? He's the Green Goblin. We shouldn't have done that. Mm-hmm. That happens in a comic called Siege, which I read recently for fun. That's not super great, but I was curious. I don't like the government lackeys, but it ends up making sense. The government should know. Mm-hmm. One thing I think is very funny is that they're like, ever since the Secret Invasion, we've set up all these systems to determine interstellar threats. And on the slideshow, it's Nova crashing in to tell them there's a threat.
It works.
It's like our sophisticated sensors pick this up, and it's a dude who crashed into Earth, destroying buildings and planes to just say there's a threat.
Yeah. By the way, that insurance plan we were talking about, we're gonna need to double down on some of that.
Does it cover Nova? But basically they're explaining like in what the Phoenix would look like to outsiders, right? Like we're X-Men fans. So to us, the Phoenix is complicated. Like the Phoenix, took over Jean Grey, but Jean Grey is a great person. She fought it. It was this huge metaphor. It's been kind of, in and out of the X-Men mythology, but we see it as a more nuanced thing. And I think the cool thing about the scene is they're like, brass tacks, like it just blows up planets.
Yeah.
Like, it's coming here. This is a huge deal. What it does is it shows up at planets, destroys them, finds a host, and then just burns everything. And it's like, like as the X-Men, you talk about the Phoenix, we get all these, ideas about the Phoenix saga and the trial of Jean Grey and stuff. And to everybody else in the Marvel universe, it's Galactus.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And that's how they treat it. I think that's very cool.
We get this splash shot of the rest of the Avengers who were, I guess, in the room somewhere. And I don't know why the pairing between War Machine and Vision makes me laugh so much. All of these pairings are really funny to me. Like
and the rest.
Yeah. Mockingbird and that guy.
Yeah. Protector and Valkyrie hanging out.
But while they're saying like, hey, we're going to go to space, we're going to go try to intercept this thing before it hits, Earth, they get a signal, and of course, we know that Hope just flamed out with some Phoenix Force, and they detect it. And then we kind of end on not a cliffhanger, but Captain America's like, "Can you tell us where?" And then we immediately crash over to the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning, where Captain America has come to see Wolverine. This feels like sounds like an off-model Wolverine to me. I don't know.
Dude, it's Big Bendis problem, man. Like the way he in the Avengers comic, the way he writes Thor, like it just sounds like a dude with a fancy font. He doesn't change the voices at all. To catch everybody up, Wolverine is now running the school part of the X-Men. Him and Cyclops got into a big fight. He went and started this school. And Cyclops stayed with the almost like religious fanatics, like these people who are mutant kind, like into saving mutant kind as a species. And Wolverine is sticking with the original vision. Mm-hmm. It's a school. He's very off model. He's not talking like Wolverine at all. But basically what Cap is trying to say is like, it's coming to Earth. Do we know where it's going? And he's like, oh yeah, we know where. Like everybody in this community knows where. And Cap is basically pressuring him. Like, I hope, will Scott work with me? And Wolverine's like, no, the Phoenix killed his one chance at happiness. Yeah. Like if this thing's coming back, Scott's going to do something about it. And then, Captain America's like, can I count on the school? And Wolverine's like, no, because the school, I want these kids not to be soldiers. And then he says, can I count on you? And Wolverine, like this gives Wolverine pause. Wolverine just got into a big fight with Scott not too long ago, and this is a big deal to have him fight the X-Men.
Yeah, and we'll be figuring out, we'll be covering a lot more of Wolverine's kind of decision making process, because we'll see this exact same scene in 2 more episodes of this podcast. We go back over to Utopia, where Colossus, Namor, Emma Frost, Magneto are all kind of watching Super Svelte, Slim, and discussing like what their plan is. And, Scott's just kind of out with it. He's like, hey, this is potentially the thing that saves our species. Like, this is pure power to put the world back on track. And even Magneto is like, hey, Scott, like those are my lines. Like,
yeah, you sound like 60s age me. And his point is, it's not, totally like he's kind of portrayed in this comic as being in the wrong, but he's not totally crazy here. Cause he's like, what happened to us is not normal. Like that wasn't natural, and it's not right. like we consider ourselves to be a species and we were decimated for no good reason. We're an endangered species now. That's ridiculous. That's not what we were meant to be. And he's saying like the Phoenix keeps coming back to us. Like we keep having Phoenix stories. It keeps coming to Earth. It keeps coming to the X-Men. Why is that? Is the timing of this not a coincidence? They're saying like, hey, when it shows up, it brings death and destruction. And he's like, yeah, but also rebirth. And last time we did this, we were young and foolish, now we're better. And it's tricky, and Emma is kind of the voice of reason here, who is like, no, it's up to Hope, right? Like, he's saying we should train her, make her a good Phoenix. And Emma's like, it's up to her. Like, you have to leave this decision up to her.
Yeah.
And since this is kind of a little bit of him, like at this point he had become, Cyclops has become a Magneto Professor X kind of merge. Him taking this decision out of Hope's hand is a lesson directly out of the Xavier playbook.
Yeah.
This is him being Xavier.
And this idea that you could train anything, like you could train somebody's goodness, right? Like we're just going to train her mind and her body and her spirit. Like, okay, but like she's still a person, and you're not going to be able to fundamentally change a person by kicking them in the stomach in a danger room. Like it's just not going to happen.
Over and over and over. Yeah. And moreover, a kid.
Also that,
So as they're having this debate, people are trying to talk him out of this. The debate gets ended for them because the Avengers show up. Captain America shows up on the beach.
Yep.
And Cyclops comes down to talk to him, and it's tense. The rest of the X-Men hang back. Emma's like, hey, Scott can handle it. Leave it back. There's no need to ramp this up. And Namor is like, I know Captain America. If he's here, it's ramped up.
I love that line delivery. If he is here, it's already, as you say, ramped up. Like it's just really funny to me. I kind of against my, like, I was always mixed feelings about Namor joining the Avengers, but I do like the character. Like, I think that he's a fun character. I've always had mixed feelings on Namor, period. And I've always thought it was really weird that he was a mutant at all. Like, that's always just kind of been, like, I don't think I remember that happening in the comic books. It's just like, I picked up a book one day and he's like, I'm an X-Man. And I'm like, wait a minute, why? Like, you're just kind of an asshole.
It was like a promotional retcon thing where people were like, oh, he's the first mutant, who showed up. Like, he is an Atlantean, which has its own suite of powers, but he's also a mutant Atlantean. So they kind of capitalized on that. I remember like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in seeing him in this and see if he changes my mind at all. Cause I think nowadays, like the kind of arrogant attitude around the rest of the X-Men would work for me better than, teenage Jeremy.
Yeah, we need somebody to keep Cyclops in place here.
Exactly.
Right. And we can kind of see what they're doing with the rest of the team around him here. Like we got Emma Frost, who is his love. His team is now composed of more than half ex-villains, and Colossus, who is taken over by Juggernaut.
Yes.
Like he's surrounded entirely by villains. And he's surrounded by different kinds of like attitudes, like Magneto, who is the mutant supremacist. Namor, who is the absolute arrogant, like also a supremacist, a different kind of supremacist. Emma Frost, who is like the teacher side of the X-Men, and his lover, but is, not without her faults. And then Colossus, what's left of Colossus is kind of the last person on the team who is still on the team from the old school.
Yeah.
Everybody else is gone. Like, so you got to kind of feel for Cyclops here.
Absolutely.
A little bit. Like, this is not a great situation for Cyclops to be in. Like, this has to be lonely as shit.
And again, not to belabor the point, but like also on the, this is also after House of M and Decimation, where, a lot of his friends were either dead or were killed or completely depowered. So they're not even mutants anymore, which drives a wedge into people. Like I vaguely remember there being a story with either Havoc or Iceman where they were like, finally, like I could just go be human. Like this is what I've always wanted. I don't have to get caught up in all the superhero bullshit. I may be getting that superhero wrong. I don't remember exactly which one it is, but just to drive home that like absolute isolation that Cyclops is right now. Like it's surrounded by not necessarily strangers, but people that he probably wouldn't necessarily want to be around, feeling completely responsible for the welfare of his entire species because he's kind of inherited this child. And yeah, like it's a lot. And then fucking Captain America shows up with an attitude. I'd want to punch Captain America too.
Yeah, he's Captain America's trying to show up like a big swinging dick, He just immediately says, we need to take Hope into protective custody. the Phoenix Force is coming to Earth, saying towards her, we need to do this. And Cyclops immediately clocks that he's talked to Wolverine.
Yeah.
And Emma Frost, who is, got her man's back, is like, he's not leaving without her, Scott. Like, I've read his mind. Like, this is not you're not gonna talk him down. So he's got intelligence. And Scott, knows this at this point. And he's just like, hey, like, this is a mutant problem. Like, we're going to handle it. And Cap's like, we're not going to handle, no, this is a human problem. This is a mankind problem. You're not going to handle it. This is on us. And they have this like little philosophical debate, that is good. I think this is really cool. Like, Captain America's like, you're too close to this. Like, you are in this, you can't see the big picture. And Cyclops is like, you are too far away from it. Like, you don't give a shit about us. And this is the crossover that like got a lot of credit. Like, I think that it's a crossover that has kind of mixed reviews in general, but it got a lot of credit for like finally, the X-Men finally being like, hey, Avengers, like, why were you not fighting Sentinels?
Exactly.
Like if Ultron shows up and fights people in New York, you'll scramble the jets. If Sentinels come and try to kill a mutant kid, you don't care. Like, that's pretty fucked up, man.
Exactly. Yeah. I like this conversation a lot too. Like, this is just being like a kind of a tense conversation, like this basic philosophical thing before it did like turns into violence. And like, not to go, Magneto made some valid points or whatever, but like both of them are making like sense. Like, Scott's view of this could be the savior of his people, and Captain America's view of this could be the destruction of the entire world are both right. Like, both of those possibilities exist in this space, and I'm kind of pro Scott at the moment, just because like Captain America's being like, we need to take her to protective. Like, are you going to put her on the fucking raft? Like, she's a girl, she's a teenager. Like, and she's like basically our family. So I really like the way this is kind of developing so far. Like, this is really, really good.
It's when you're going to do a versus story, it only works if both sides have good points.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like you don't do this and have, and you can do that wrong. You can do something like Civil War where both sides had arguably good points, but in order to balance the scales, they just made everybody act like a fucking moron. Like I kind of like that comic because I like the concept and some of the action and art, but it is really silly that like, to have Iron Man create a clone of Thor that is a murderous robot.
Yes.
Like, that's stupid as hell. You have to make him really bad because his point makes sense. So you had to make him a monster. I also love the scene where all the other X-Men are watching, and Cyclops is like, we're going to figure it out, get the hell off my island. And Namor is like, the gauntlet's been thrown. He's forcing Roger's hand. And I love the shit-eating grin on Namor's face.
He's just ready to do some violence. Yeah.
yeah. He's just like, oh, hell yeah, dude. This is going to be a World Star, Hell yeah.
He's definitely the guy with the cell phone yelling World Star in the background.
Yeah.
Is there a 616 World Star? There needs to be.
he's back at it, Krispy Kreme. And I love this little bit at the end where Captain America's like, you understand I wasn't asking? And he's like, yeah, I understood that completely. Really, really good. I've been rewatching Breaking Bad and I'm watching Better Call Saul. And these kind of like really good, like, no, I get it. Like, you can't intimidate me. Like, we're doing this moments are like some of my favorite things that happen in these kind of dramatic standoffs. And it's like, blast him.
He does.
Skrazkoom.
Everybody, like, we see this like frame of Emma going like, God damn it, like, I did not want it to come to this. And then we get some more X-Men in the background show up, which looks like Danger.
Hey guys, what I miss?
What's going on, guys? I can't remember. This isn't Thunderbird, right? This is Thunderbird's brother at this point.
Warpath.
Thank you. I can never remember that dude's name.
Warpath, Domino, maybe Sunfire.
Fire guy, we don't know. Sunspot,
a figure who's in maybe Sunspot, and then a figure who's in Shadow who we don't know.
Yeah.
And Captain America goes, well, Avengers assemble, and we see the jet with all the Avengers waiting.
Yeah.
To show up here,
and like a lot of them, Gary. Like going through the list: Doctor Strange, Thing, Spider-Woman, Ant-Man, Wolverine, Hawkeye, Red Hulk, Luke Cage, Mockingbird, Iron Fist, Iron Man. I almost said Scarlet Witch, Black Widow. Spider-Man, Black Panther, and Daredevil. Like, all of them motherfuckers on the same boat.
Well, and they've got a bunch of them have pugil sticks from American Gladiators.
Yeah,
I don't know what these are. I'm assuming that they're like mutant depowerers or something.
Sure, yeah.
You know, it's a weird little detail. Also, Spider-Man's being real sloppy with those webs. I don't know if you noticed that, but he's just kind of getting his shit everywhere. Disgusting.
They're going to make Jarvis clean that shit up later. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and this isn't where they're bio webs either, so it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's not repulsive where it's like, oh my god, get your goo off the fucking thing.
Yeah, get your droppings. Please don't put your droppings on my raft.
Don't husk us. So Cyclops says, like, you know, Emma, protect Hope at all costs. Emma says that's her decision, and he says not anymore. Going full Professor X. And Hope is looking at this, and we think the X-Men are fucked, but we see the Phoenix in her eyes.
Yep.
Which is probably what's going to even the scales when we get back to this fight.
Yep. And that is the end.
And that's the issue
of Avengers versus X-Men 1. I think this is a really good way to kick off the story. And I think that if I was just mainlining the main series, I would have already been done with it by now. Like that, this is really, really fucking good. And I'm extremely I'm just all into what is happening right now.
Yeah. I would like to, I want to see what happens.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But if we did that, we would never learn about UNIT.
We would never know about UNIT.
I can't.
The Uncanny X-Men.
I cannot countenance a world without UNIT. So stay tuned for UNIT news. We're going to have to pivot to a UNIT podcast where like it's mostly about every appearance of UNIT and then every episode of the UNIT animated series.
The UNIT cast.
Yeah, the UNIT cast. Yeah, this is cool. I'm excited.
Yes.
Doing it in this crossover mode and having to wait for the payoff is very similar to what it would be like if we were getting the comics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, oh, we got to read all this other stuff. It's gonna be a slow burn. And as much as that might not be my preferred way to experience these things, it is interesting because that's how they were experienced when they first came out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you like this podcast, you should go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, kick in some dollars every month, and in return you get a just absolute crap load of additional content. You get episodes early, you get access to the Slack channel, just a ton of good stuff there. You can even boss Gary and Cole around and make them cover bad video games if you want to.
You can for money,
for cash,
for sale. Filthy lucre. Hit us up.
It is the most ethical way to exchange your currency for suffering. It's just the easiest and most ethical way to do so.
Yeah, it's probably true, other than like certain sex workers and stuff. You can also leave us ratings, reviews on Apple Podcast or Podcast Addict, and most importantly, tell your friends.
Yes.
You got X-Men friends, make them Days of Future friends. You know, we'd love to have them.
We'd love to have them. We'll be back in a couple of days with Uncanny X-Men number 10, the UNIT cast.
Yeah.